Before I begin, let me say I love my wife very much and still do. When I said for better or for worse, I meant it. I don't love what she has become is the problem. The only reason I'm even typing this out is to get it off my chest to someone. My wife and I had been trying to have a baby for a little over a year now, but hadn't succeeded until I bought some takeout at this new restaurant near our home. Molly had miscarried the previous week and was soaking around in a depressive state ever since. She hadn't been eating very much and had quarantined herself into her dark bedroom to grieve over our latest loss. I know Chinese food is her favorite and it might be the only way to get a full meal in her. It was a nice evening overall. We watched a comedy on TV. Molly gratefully gobbled down the orange chicken with fried rice, and afterwards he cracked open our fortune cookies. Mine said something about working hard. Didn't really care, but I remember hers clear as day. Now is the time. It read in tiny black letters. In that moment, she pounced on me. We made love most of the night, and a few weeks later, my wife was pregnant again. Once she made it past the 2-month mark, we were comfortable enough to tell our family and friends without fear of another miscarriage. I felt like all of our troubles were behind us and looked forward to starting our perfect family together. Little did I know, that was far from the end of our problems. The pregnancy so far has been pretty standard aside from one thing. Molly's cravings for Chinese food was obscene. At first, she would go through multiple cup of noodles a day, or she would cook all of our white rice and douse it in soy sauce, which wasn't that bad. It was even sort of cute at first to joke about. After weeks of this, the only thing I could get her to eat was her special order from that same restaurant. It was almost like an addiction. But anyone who's had a pregnant partner in the past will tell you that you never want to be on their bad side. I was having to make daily trips after work to the damn place, and the smell of sriracha had just begun to make me gag. And she was about 24 weeks into the pregnancy when I went to pick up her latest orange chicken fix. I found that the place had been shut down and boarded up with tape covering the perimeter. It seemed a little much for a potential health code violation, but it made me worry about the oriental chicken crazed monster that was sleeping next to me at night. I knew this news would upset her greatly, so I drove to a different restaurant and got the same meal for her just in case she was still hungry. When I got home, I broke the news to her but then offered the takeout box as a substitute. I expected her to be a little bummed, but nothing could have prepared me for her reaction. She grabbed the box and opened it frantically near the kitchen counter. She didn't even get silverware. She just dove into the food with her bare hand. She scooped the warm food into her mouth in a primal way before suddenly halting. She frowned and threw the whole box against the wall, screeching like a banshee that it wasn't the same. I was dumbfounded for a few moments, unsure of what to do until she stormed off to our bedroom and slammed the door behind her. I convinced myself that her hormones must be the culprit behind her aggressive behavior and proceeded to clean up the mess she left behind. The next few days, I dreaded coming home from work. The woman I married was barely recognizable in comparison to this swollen-bellied maniac that took her place, and she refused to eat anything except for her special order, but there's no way I could get it to her. She went 4 full days without so much as a nibble, and it made her go a little nuts. The first day I came back without it, she wouldn't let me touch her anymore, and would simply scream as if I were beating her without mercy. The police even showed up after a while to make sure I wasn't battering her. On the second day, she actually slapped me, but she's not very strong. Her nails did scratch me though, and I had to lie about it when my coworkers asked about its origins. The day after that, she just sat on my lap and cried. The collar of my shirt was covered in snot and drool as she wept for her beloved meal. She begged and begged, but I just couldn't make her understand that it was gone. On the 4th day, she locked me out of our room. She just slid my clothes and toothbrush under the door and then forced me onto the couch that night. The hunger, pains keeping her bedridden after that. I had planned to talk to her doctor about fears of her starving when I came home again on the 5th day, ready for her howling screams of disapproval, but instead saw her in the kitchen with a big smile on her face. Just that morning she was hacking bile into our toilet and cursing me for neglect. Now she was my sweet Molly, cooking what smelled and looked like a stew. I smiled and hugged her gently, rubbing her belly with one hand. It had felt like a lifetime since the last time I held a woman I married. I asked why she seemed so chipper now, and she said that once she ate something she felt a lot better and realized she didn't need her special order. I was relieved to say the least, and so was my wallet, but it was only for a short while. I wanted to believe the woman I shared a home with was back to her normal self again. Of course, I wouldn't be writing this if I had been that lucky. It was about 2 weeks later that I noticed all of the missing pet posters going up around our neighborhood. The standard stuff really that I didn't pay too much attention to, till my neighbor John stopped me before I went into my domicile for the rest of the day. You know, it's dangerous to have a cat with a baby in the house. Could suffocate the poor thing. He told me, which I was seriously confused by since we don't have a cat. I explained this to him, even admitting my allergy to their fur, but he insisted that 3 days ago, my not quite back to normal wife left our home and came back with a mewling pet carrier. He asked if she needed help, but he said she ignored him and quickly went inside. I asked Molly about it, but she said our neighbor was a nosy bastard and she never brought a cat home with her. I believed her, chalking it up to a lonely old man wanting some brief company until we flipped on the news that night. We had a nice evening and home with Molly in a good mood until we saw our local news reporting in front of the restaurant she had been obsessed with. The young reporter informed our town that the repulsive restaurant had been serving cats as chicken. My wife quickly changed the channel as I gagged and remembered all of the orange chicken and even the few meals I had eaten from there. This is gonna sound silly, but I couldn't get the story John told me out of my head after that either. There's plenty of things we could have talked about, but why on earth would he make Molly bringing home a cat? It was painting a disturbing picture of my wife now. I had a feeling what she was up to while I was working, but I had no proof. Not until her baby shower, that is. I wasn't invited, like most husbands, so I got the house to myself for the day. I killed most of the time with video games, but my controller's batteries had died. We have a small cabinet above our stove where we keep flashlights, batteries, and other miscellaneous items. It's above my head and I can barely see inside of without a stool, so I grabbed one to make my life easier. While I retrieved the batteries, I saw an old butter tub that I never put in there. Obviously, my wife must have done it, but I wanted to know what it was there for. I took it from the cabinet, noting it made a soft jingling sound, and popped it open easily. I wish I had it now. What I saw staring back at me were tiny, brightly colored collars. Most were equipped with bells and even name tags. I picked one up, looking it over. It was bright green, white polka dots, silver bell, and a name tag. I didn't read it though. I was more focused on reddish-brown smudges that covered the inside of the bowl, and tiny braided collars. I thought I was gonna have an anxiety attack until I heard the front door open. I quickly put the collars away and took the batteries I needed before playing the dutiful husband and helping get all the new items from our car for the baby room. She's 36 weeks along in her pregnancy now. I still haven't confronted her about finding the collars. I want to wait until after the kids are born so she doesn't hurt herself to spite me. According to their previous ultrasounds, we're expecting 3 perfectly healthy babies. I know, triplets, a little crazy, right? We went from barely able to have children to having 3 miracles overnight. However, it's not as fantastic as it sounds. Turns out around the same time my wife had her last miscarriage, she ordered these organic fertility pills online, and apparently they really worked. Of course, I didn't find this out until the day we realized she was having multiple babies. Our most recent visit to the clinic revealed their sexes. 2 little boys and a precious girl. Can't wait to see them. They'll make this period in our lives worth it. I remember thinking as I gazed at the monochrome screen. I was on the precipice of tears when something my wife said caught my attention. "It's like we're having a whole litter," she said with a toothy grin stretched across her face. That unsettled me, especially the way she looked at the screen with her wide eyes. I don't want to believe my wife would eat our children, but it happens in nature all the time if you think about it. I had a pet hamster as a kid that ate all of her babies. It freaked the hell out of me then. The more I look at how my wife gazes at her swollen belly, the hungrier her eyes seem to me. I think once the children are able to leave the hospital, I'm gonna take them and divorce my wife. However, if she resists, I'll have to put down the feral mother to protect her litter.